When they first arrived here on migration in October, there was no coloration to that bill at all, but the older ones are starting to get that yellow coloration. Anything up to 5, maybe even 6 cygnets in a brood, and they fly to overwinter here on the Easewashes from their breeding ground in Iceland. It's a journey of around about 1,200 miles, and it's a journey they'll do in one go without stopping. If you look on a map of the world, there's not a lot between the bottom of Iceland and the top of Scotland. Widely thought to be the longest oversea uninterrupted migration of any of the swan species. So they arrive here in probably mid to end of October. They time it absolutely perfectly. They arrive here about the same time as British Sugar start the sugar beet campaign. Farmers harvest the beet, take the beet to the factory and leave the tops behind. The swans go mad for this perfect high energy food to help them recharge their batteries following their flight down from Iceland. So in those family groups, they'll fly out every morning to feed in these fields. It's not uncommon to find fields with 800, 900, over 1,000 swans in any one field. So this is where they come into conflict with the power lines. They'll leave the washes in the morning and go out to feed. Often at first light, maybe a bit misty, murky, so the power lines aren't very visible. They'll fly out and spend the day feeding on these farmers' fields, and then in the evening they would normally return back to the washes to roost here and safety of the washes. And the following morning, they'll take off, go out and feed in the fields again. They'll go back to that field until either the farmers plough the beet tops back in, or the swans have cleared everything. They're also partial to an old rotten potato, where they've harvested the potatoes and the smaller potatoes have dropped through the webs on the harvester. They'll go around and hoover up the potatoes that have been left behind. They'll do that, the daily flights in and out in the family group. They're a bit mixed up now, but you'll see as these swans, once they finish feeding and start moving off, that you'll see the cygnets with their parents, and they'll stay in those family groups right the way from when they migrated down from Iceland. Migration down here, all the time they're here on the washes, and then when they return back to Iceland in the spring. So that's our hooper. Now the third swan that we get here, which is more elusive, we were seeing a few more when the water levels have dropped. They very, very rarely come to the swan feeds, and that's the Buick swan. What's worrying is back in the late 60s, early 70s, when Peter Scott opened this reserve, his warden at the time was feeding hundreds and hundreds of Buick swans and only a handful of hoopers. Just through climate change and different migration patterns, very successful breeding of the hooper swan in Iceland has seen the numbers almost completely reverse. So if you did have a Buick swan here, a little bit smaller again than the hooper, a lot less yellow on its bill. So if you look back at these, they've got this yellow wedge that extends out beyond the swan's nostril. You can see the nostrils on the ones that get closer to you. If that was a Buick swan, that yellow never extends out beyond the swan's nostril. So it looks, in the distance, it looks predominantly black. They are slightly smaller and they have a shorter, stiffer, straighter neck. Some say they're almost goose-like in profile. But if you're looking at them in the distance and the bills look predominantly black, chances are you could well be looking at a Buick swan. They fly even further to overwinter here on the washes. They fly from their breeding ground, which is within the Arctic Circle on the Russian tundra, and they fly south and west ahead of the cold weather. Now, because we're getting milder winters, not only here but on the continent, the Buick swans have no need to fly all the way to the UK. They're not daft. Why fly all the way to the UK when they're flying over open, unfrozen lakes and farmland with feed on it along their flyway? So you're looking at places like Germany, the Netherlands, Latvia. Wherever there's open water and food, the Buicks will stay. So we're seeing less and less Buick swans make it here to the UK. Despite that, Welney and the Easewashes still remains the best place in the UK to see significant numbers of Buick swans. Our current count this year is around about 300, which is nowhere near what it used to be, but it's still the best place to find them. They are a little bit more elusive. very often they might be in the sort of periphery of these swan feeds, but not so often they actually come down to the feeds in amongst the hullabaloo of the hooper swans. They tend to keep themselves to themselves. They don't feed exclusively just in the field on their own. They're often mixed up with the hoopers because they're on a similar sort of diet: sugar beet tops and potatoes. So it's just a case of finding your field of swans and methodically working your way from one side to the other with scope and trying to pick the buicks out. Once you've